My mother threw me out at 16 for smelling stinky because she wanted a perfect life with her new husband. Now that I'm a wealthy fragrance mogul, they're begging for money to save their mansion, so I prepared a donation that will cost them everything. Before we begin today's story, we have an urgent announcement. Due to technical issues, this channel is shutting down. But don't worry, the stories continue. Please subscribe to our new channel, Daily Drip Stories. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. I was lying in the dark, the blackout curtains of my penthouse master bedroom drawn tight against the mid-afternoon sun. My head felt like it was being squeezed in a vice, the remnants of a migraine that had laid me out for 2 days straight. The silence in the apartment was usually a comfort, a symbol of how far I had come from the chaotic, screaming misery of my childhood. But today, with the throbbing pain behind my eyes, the silence felt heavy. Lonely. I rolled over, the silk sheets cool against my skin, and reached for the glass of water on the nightstand. My hand trembled slightly. Stress, my doctor had said. You've built an empire, Willow, but you're burning the candle at both ends. The phone on the nightstand buzzed, the vibration sounding like a jackhammer in the quiet room. I squinted at the screen, expecting to see Sarah's name, perhaps asking about the supply chain issues for our new resilience line. It was Sarah. The number was unsaved, but the area code sent a jolt of ice straight through my chest, instantly overriding the heat of the migraine. It was the area code of the town I hadn't set foot in for 12 years. The town where I had been discarded like a bag of trash. I shouldn't have answered. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but a morbid curiosity, a ghost of the scared little girl I used to be, took control. I swiped right and brought the phone to my ear, not saying a word. Willow. The voice was unmistakable. It was smoother now, perhaps a little aged, but it still carried that airy, performative sweetness that made my skin crawl. It was Julia, my mother. My breath hitched, catching in my dry throat. I couldn't speak. I hadn't heard that voice since she told me to get out of her car on the side of the highway. Willow, are you there? She asked, her tone shifting slightly, sounding almost desperate. No, not desperate, entitled. It's Mom. I know it's been a while, sweetie, but we really need to talk. It's about the twins and the house. Sebastian and we're in a bit of a situation. I sat up, the room spinning slightly. Sweetie. The word felt like a slap. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't apologize for 12 years of silence. She didn't ask if I was alive or dead. She went straight to the we. Her, Sebastian, and the twins, the family that replaced me. Who gave you this number? I finally managed to rasp out, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. Oh, don't be like that, she sighed, the sweetness dropping for a split second to reveal the annoyance underneath. Family finds a way. Look, we saw the article in Forbes. We know you're doing well, and honestly, Willow, we're drowning here. We need you to come home. We need your help. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive in its monstrosity. You threw me out, I whispered, the memory of the rain and the humiliation flooding back. You told me I smelled. You told me I was ruining your fresh start. That was a long time ago. She dismissed it instantly, as if talking about a spilled cup of coffee. We've all grown up, but right now we're family, and family helps each other. We need $200,000, Willow, by the end of the month, or we lose everything. The silence that followed was thick. The migraine pounded in rhythm with my heart. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted an ATM. But as I sat there, pain radiating through my skull, a cold clarity washed over me. 200,000, I asked, my voice steadying. Yes, she said, sounding relieved, assuming she had already won. It's nothing to you now, right? No, I said softly, it's nothing. I hung up the phone. I didn't block the number. I stared at the blank screen, the physical pain in my head receding as a new, sharp focus took its place. The betrayal wasn't that they asked for money. The betrayal was that they thought I was still the same desperate child who would pay for their love. They had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just Willow the stinky teenager anymore. I was Willow the CEO. And in business, when someone tries a hostile takeover, you don't just defend yourself. You crush them. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself, but the remedy, why I was about to concoct, would be far more potent than any perfume I had ever sold. I couldn't go back to sleep. The adrenaline was coursing through my veins, toxic and electric. I dragged myself out of bed, wrapping a cashmere robe around my shivering frame, and walked out onto the balcony. The city skyline was spread out before me, a glittering testament to everything I had built from nothing. Nothing, that's what I had when Julia kicked me out. I had a backpack of dirty clothes, $3, and a crushing sense of shame that she had carefully cultivated in me for years. I went to the kitchen and made a cup of herbal tea, my hands performing the ritual automatically. I needed to stabilize. I needed to think. Sarah arrived an hour later. She had a key, of course. She was the one who found me sleeping behind the dumpster of the diner she worked at when she was 20 and I was 16. She was the one who let me shower in her tiny studio apartment, who taught me how to wash my clothes properly, who told me I didn't smell like garbage, I just smelled like abandonment. "You look like hell," Sarah said, dropping her purse on the counter and immediately moving to check my forehead. "Migraine still." "Julia called," I said flatly. Sarah froze. Her hand hovered in midair before slowly dropping to her side. Her expression shifted from concern to a terrifying, protective rage. "She what? How? How did she get your number?" "She saw the Forbes article, the one about the scent of success." She tracked me down. I took a sip of tea, the warmth doing little to thaw the ice in my stomach. "They want money, Sarah, $200,000. Sarah let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "You're joking. Tell me you're joking. After 12 years? After she literally threw your clothes on the lawn while Sebastian laughed." "She called me sweetie," I added, looking down into my mug. "She said family helps each other." Sarah slammed her hand onto the marble countertop. "I will fly down there and burn their house down myself. I am not kidding, Willow. Do not give them a dime. Block the number. Change your number. We can have security." "I'm not blocking them," I interrupted, looking up. My eyes met hers, and I saw her recoil slightly at the look on my face. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was calculation. "Willow," Sarah started, a warning in her tone. "Don't do this. Don't engage. They are vampires. They will drain you dry and then complain about the taste." "They don't know who I am," I said quietly. "They think I'm still the little girl who cried when they locked the fridge so I couldn't eat their food. They think I'm desperate for their approval." I walked over to the window, looking at my reflection in the glass. I looked expensive. My skin was flawless, the result of years of dermatology and the very skincare line I had created. My hair was glossy. I didn't look like the stinky girl anymore. "I'm going to go see them," I announced. "No," Sarah said immediately. "Absolutely not." "I have to," I insisted, turning back to her. "If I just block them, they'll keep trying. They'll go to the press. They'll sell a sob story about how the heartless millionaire daughter abandoned her struggling parents. I need to end this. Permanently." "And how do you plan to do that?" Sarah crossed her arms, unconvinced. "By writing a check." "No," I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "By giving them exactly what they asked for, help with the house." I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. I logged into a secure database, one I used for corporate acquisitions. I typed in the address I remembered all too well. 14 Oakwood Drive. "They said they're losing the house," I murmured, scanning the public records. "Foreclosure proceedings started 3 months ago. Sebastian hasn't paid property taxes in 2 years. They are leveraged to the hilt." "So let them lose it," Sarah argued. "But if I pay it off?" I trailed off, my eyes locking onto a specific detail in the deed history. A lien. A private lien held by a holding company that looked suspiciously like a shell corporation for high-risk loans. Willow, what are you thinking? Sarah asked, stepping closer, looking at the screen over my shoulder. I'm thinking that if I handle this correctly, I won't just be saving their house, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I'll be owning it. I looked at Sarah. They want a savior. I'm going to be their landlord, and they have no idea that the contract they're going to sign isn't a gift. It's an eviction notice waiting to happen. But they had forgotten one crucial thing, I said, tapping the screen where Sebastian's signature was scrawled on a loan document from 5 years ago. I know about the trust fund Grandma left for the firstborn grandchild, the one they told me didn't exist. Sarah's eyes widened. The one you legally turned 18 to inherit 10 years ago but never claimed. Exactly, I said. They think they spent it. They think they drained it to buy that house. But they couldn't touch the principal. They committed fraud to get the loan based on assets they didn't own, and I have the paper trail. To understand why I was willing to fly across the country to destroy my own mother, you have to understand the smell. That's what they used against me. When I was 14, Julia met Sebastian. Sebastian was a consultant. To this day, I don't know what he actually consulted on, but he wore shiny suits and drove a leased BMW and told my mother she was too beautiful to be single. He moved in within a month. With Sebastian came the rules. I was too loud. I took up too much space. And then, when the depression hit, the crushing, paralyzing weight of watching my mother morph into a sycophant for a man who ignored me, I stopped caring for myself. I showered less. I wore the same hoodies. I was crying out for help in the only silent way I knew how. Instead of help, I got ridicule. God, Willow, you reek, Sebastian would say, pinching his nose when I walked into the kitchen. Julia, can't you hose her down? My mother would laugh. That was the worst part. She would laugh, a tinkling, desperate sound, trying to align herself with him. I know, baby, she's just difficult. She's going through a phase. Then the twins came, Kyle and Caroline, the fresh start, the do-over babies. Suddenly, my room was needed for the nursery. I was moved to the basement. It was damp down there. My clothes started to smell of mildew, which only fueled Sebastian's narrative. I became the stink. That was his nickname for me. When I was 16, they sat me down. Julia was holding a newborn Caroline. Sebastian was drinking scotch. We think it's best if you find somewhere else to live, Sebastian said, not even looking at me. With the babies, we need a hygienic environment, and frankly, you're disgusting. Mom, I had pleaded, looking at her. Please, I have nowhere to go. She looked at the baby in her arms, then at Sebastian. She chose them. You're 18 months away from being an adult, Willow. You need to learn independence, and honestly, the smell. It's just too much for the babies. That was the last time I saw them. Now, sitting on my private jet, a ridiculous luxury I allowed myself only because it saved time, I looked at the dossier Sarah had compiled on Sebastian. He hadn't changed. If anything, he had gotten worse. The consulting business had dissolved years ago. He was now listing himself as an entrepreneur and visionary on LinkedIn. His profile picture was heavily filtered, showing him in a rented tuxedo. According to the report, he had blown through the family savings on investment opportunities that looked like Ponzi schemes. He had leased luxury cars. He couldn't afford to keep up appearances for the country club set. And Julia, she was selling essential oils on Facebook, posting vaguely spiritual quotes about abundance and manifesting wealth, while secretly taking out credit cards in the twins' names. The twins, Kyle and Caroline, they were 12 now, the same age I was when the neglect really started. I looked at the photos Sarah had found on social media. They looked impeccable, dressed in designer clothes, likely bought on credit, smiling on a boat, holding trophies. They were the trophies. Julia and Sebastian were parading them around like prize poodles, just as they had tried to do with me before I became difficult. They have no idea what's coming, Sarah said from the seat across from me. She had insisted on coming. You know Sebastian is going to try to charm you, right? He's going to act like he never called you the stink. I'm counting on it, I said, smoothing down the skirt of my tailored suit. I want him to feel comfortable. I want him to think he's manipulating me again. It's the only way he'll sign the papers. And the papers? Sarah asked, glancing at the leather portfolio on the table between us. Ironclad, I said. My lawyers drafted them this morning. It looks like a simple loan agreement. A bridge loan to stop the foreclosure. But the collateral clause, that's the beauty of it. The collateral is the house. No, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. The collateral is his consulting company, and the intellectual property rights to anything he creates. But the real kicker is the morality clause. If they default, which they will because the interest rate balloons in 30 days, the deed to the house reverts to me and they have 48 hours to vacate. No squatter's rights. No eviction process. They signed it away in the fine print. But why would he sign that? Sarah asked. Because he's arrogant, I replied. And because I'm bringing a check for $200,000. Greed blinds people, Sarah, especially people like Sebastian. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Ms. Willow, we're beginning our descent. I look out the window as the familiar landscape of my trauma came into view. Green suburbs, manicured lawns, hidden miseries. Showtime, I whispered. The rental car wasn't just a car, it was a statement. I had requested the sleekest, blackest Mercedes the local agency had, a stark contrast to the rusted bicycle I used to ride around this town, trying to escape the suffocation of my home life. As I drove through the familiar streets, a phantom itch crawled under my skin. The town hadn't changed, but the lens I viewed it through had. The streets looked smaller, the buildings grayer. Turn left here, Sarah said, looking at the GPS on her phone. The county clerk's office is next to the library. I know, I replied, my grip tightening on the leather steering wheel. I used to hide in that library. It was the only place that didn't smell like Sebastian's cheap cigars. We weren't going to the house yet. That was the mistake most victims made, rushing into the confrontation fueled by emotion. I was running on cold, hard data. Before I stepped foot on 14 Oakwood Drive, I needed the ammunition to bury them. We parked and walked into the municipal building. The fluorescent lights hummed with a frequency that set my teeth on edge. I requested the property records for the house, along with a specific request for any liens or judgments against Sebastian. The clerk, a woman named Brenda, who I vaguely remembered from my high school days, she used to yell at us for loitering, pushed her glasses up her nose. You need the owner's permission for some of these detailed credit reports, honey. I slid a notarized document across the counter. I have power of attorney for the silent partner of Sebastian's holding company, which is technically me since he used my identity to co-sign the initial loan 12 years ago. Verify the social security number. Brenda typed, frowned, typed again, and then her eyes went wide. Oh, I see. Print everything, I said softy. And Brenda, I need the marriage license record for Julia and Sebastian, too, and the birth certificates for the twins. We spent 2 hours in a private booth at a nearby coffee shop, not the diner Sarah used to work at. I couldn't stomach the nostalgia yet, poring over the documents. Willow, Sarah whispered, her finger tracing a line on a bank statement we had subpoenaed through my lawyer earlier that week. Look at this. I leaned in. It was a withdrawal record from a custodial account, the Grandmother Trust. He didn't just drain the interest, I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and vindication. He forged a release form. Look at the date. I was 17. I was living on your couch. He signed my name to release the funds claiming hardship for my medical care. Medical care, Sarah scoffed. He kicked you out because you smelled. He stole $40,000 from my inheritance to buy a boat, I noted, cross-referencing the date with a boat registration in the pile. A boat he sold at a loss 2 years later. But that wasn't the smoking gun. The smoking gun was in the twins' credit reports. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. Willow, look. I looked. My stomach dropped. Kyle and Caroline, 12 years old, had credit scores, and they were ruined. There were 3 credit cards opened in Kyle's name, maxed out to the limit of $15,000 each. Caroline had a defaulted loan for home improvements attached to her Social Security number. Identity theft, I said, the realization settling over me like a heavy blanket. He's doing to them what he tried to do to me. He's eating his own children alive to feed his ego. The plan shifted in my mind. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was a rescue mission. I pulled out my phone and called my legal team in New York. "Draft a new document," I ordered. "I need a conservatorship petition ready to file, and get me a direct line to the local district attorney. I have evidence of felony fraud involving minors." I hung up and looked at Sarah, ready to go see the happy family. The driveway of 14 Oakwood Drive was cracked. Weeds were pushing through the asphalt, reclaiming the territory Sebastian had once been so proud of. The lawn, which used to be manicured to within an inch of its life, was patchy and brown. The house itself looked tired. The paint was peeling around the trim, and a shutter on the second floor, the window to my old room, was hanging askew. I parked the Mercedes right in the center of the driveway, blocking both garage doors. I wanted them to see it. I wanted them to see the success they had thrown away. I stepped out, the heels of my Laubautins clicking sharply on the pavement. I was wearing a white tailored suit, a deliberate choice. White stains easily. It showed I lived a life where I didn't have to worry about dirt. I smelled like ethereal, my best-selling fragrance, jasmine, amber, and cold, hard cash. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Julia Stew. "Dee there." She looked older, not just aged, but worn. Her hair, usually dyed a fierce, artificial blonde, was showing gray roots. She was wearing a floral blouse that looked like it was from a discount rack, trying to look cheerful. "Willow," she cried out, stepping onto the porch with her arms open. She stopped short when she saw my face. I didn't move to hug her. I didn't smile. I just stood there, a statue of judgment. "Hello, Julia," I said, "not Mom." She flinched, her hands fluttering down to her sides. "Oh, right. Well, come in, come in. Sebastian is so excited to see you. And the twins are home from school." I walked past her into the foyer. The smell hit me instantly. It wasn't stinky in the way they had accused me of being. It was the smell of stagnation. Dust, old cooking grease, and a heavy layer of cheap air freshener trying to mask a damp problem. The irony was palpable. Sebastian was in the living room, sitting in his favorite recliner, the leather cracked and peeling. He stood up as I entered, smoothing down a dress shirt that was too tight around the middle. "Well, well, well," he boomed, putting on his visionary entrepreneur voice. "The prodigal daughter returns, and looking prosperous." He walked over, extending a hand. I looked at it, then looked him in the eye. I didn't shake it. "Sebastian," I nodded. He retracted his hand, a flash of irritation crossing his face before he masked it with a greasy smile. "I see you've done well for yourself. Finally learned how to use a bar of soap, eh?" Sarah, standing behind me, inhaled sharply, ready to snap. I held up a hand to stop her. "I learned a lot of things, Sebastian," I said calmly. "I learned how to mix chemical compounds. I learned how to negotiate international trade deals. And I learned how to read a balance sheet." I walked over to the dining table and placed my leather briefcase on it. "You said you needed $200,000. "It's a temporary cash flow issue," Sebastian said quickly, waving his hand dismissively. "Market volatility, you know how it is. We just need a bridge loan. We'll pay you back with interest." "Interest," I repeated, "like the interest you paid on Grandma's trust fund." The room went deadly silent. Julia, who had been hovering by the kitchen door, went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sebastian said, his eyes narrowing. "The $40,000 you stole when I was 17, I clarified, my voice rising just enough to fill the room. "The medical hardship withdrawal for the daughter you had already kicked out." "That was necessary expenses," Sebastian stammered, sweat beading on his upper lip. "Room and board, back rent." "I was homeless, Sebastian," I said coldly. I was sleeping in a storage unit while you bought a boat. That's in the past, Julia interjected, her voice shrill. Willow, please, why are you bringing up old history? We're family, we're in trouble now. I'm here to help, I lied. I opened the briefcase and pulled out a check. It was written for $200,000. I laid it on the table. Sebastian's eyes practically bugged out of his head. He reached for it. I slammed my hand down on top of the check. But first, I said, we need to discuss the terms. Terms? Sebastian bristled, pulling his hand back as if burned. Since when do children dictate terms to their parents? Since the child has the checkbook, I replied evenly, and since the parents are criminals. Don't you dare speak to him like that, Julia snapped, moving to Sebastian's side. It was pathetic. She was still shielding him, even as the ship sank. He has provided for this family. He has provided nothing, I cut her off. Where are the twins? They're in their rooms, Julia said defensively, doing homework. Get them, I ordered. No, Sebastian said, crossing his arms. This is adult business. If you want this check, I said, lifting my hand slightly to show the numbers, you will bring Kyle and Caroline down here right now. Sebastian gritted his teeth, his jaw working furiously. He nodded to Julia. She hurried upstairs. While she was gone, Sebastian tried a different tactic. He leaned against the mantel, trying to look casual. Look, Willow, I was hard on you, I admit it, but it made you tough. It made you who you are. In a way, you owe me for your success. If I hadn't pushed you out of the nest, you'd still be in this basement. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. You didn't push me out of the nest, Sebastian. You threw me off a cliff. I built my own wings on the way down. Julia returned with the twins. They were 12, lanky, and looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. They were dressed in brand-name athleisure wear, but up close, I could see the clothes were worn, the sneakers scuffed. Who is she? Kyle asked, looking at his phone, not bothering to make eye contact. I'm your sister, I said. We don't have a sister. Caroline said, popping gum. Mom said she ran away because she was crazy. I looked at Julia. She couldn't meet my eyes. Is that what she said? I walked over to the twins. I'm Willow, and I'm the one who is going to pay for your house. Maybe. I turned back to the table and pulled out the second file, the thick one. I'm willing to sign over this check to pay off the mortgage, I announced. But I have one condition. Sebastian has to explain the credit cards. Sebastian froze. What credit cards? I tossed the credit report onto the dining table. It slid across the polished wood and stopped right in front of Julia. The 3 visas in Kyle's name, I listed them off. The personal loan in Caroline's name. Total debt, $45,000. Defaulted. These children are 12 years old and they are already bankrupt. Julia picked up the paper, her hands shaking violently. She stared at the numbers. Sebastian, she whispered, what is this? It's a mistake, Sebastian said loudly, his face turning a blotchy red. Identity theft, hackers. I've been meaning to call the bureau. The billing address is this house, I said mercilessly. The recovery email is your personal Gmail account, Sebastian. I have the IP logs. I turned to the twins. Your father stole your identities to pay for. What? The lease on the BMW? The club membership. You're lying, Kyle shouted, stepping forward. Dad's rich, he's an entrepreneur. He's a fraud, I said calmly, and he's spent every dime you two have ever had. Julia, I said, turning my attention to my mother. This is the moment. This is your second chance. I am offering to pay off the mortgage. I will clear the debt, but only if you admit you knew, or if you admit you were too stupid to look. Julia looked at the paper, then at Sebastian, then at the check for $200,000. I could see the wheels turning. She was terrified of poverty. She was terrified of being alone, but the proof was right there in her hands. He told me, Julia's voice trembled. He told me he was investing it for them, for their college. By opening credit cards at 24% APR, I asked. Sebastian lunged forward, grabbing the credit report from Julia's hand and crumpling it. "This is nonsense. She faked these. She's trying to tear this family apart because she's jealous. She's always been jealous. The stink, that's all she is." He turned on me, his face inches from mine. "You get out of my house. You take your fake check and you get out." I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, smelling of jasmine and power. "I'm not leaving," I said, "and neither are they." I signaled to Sarah. She opened the front door. "Who is that?" Sebastian roared. "That," I said, as a man in a suit walked in, followed by 2 uniformed officers, "is the district attorney. And I believe he has a few questions about financial fraud involving minors." The color drained from Sebastian's face, so completely he looked like a corpse. "But before they take you away," I said, picking up the check and ripping it slowly, deliberately in half, "we have a family dinner to attend. I believe Aunt Linda and the cousins are coming over for the celebration you plan to show off my money. They'll be here in 10 minutes. "You wouldn't," Julia gasped. "Oh, I would," I smiled. "I want everyone to know exactly why the police are taking Sebastian away. I want the audience you crave so badly to see the finale." The timing was impeccable. It was the kind of timing that usually requires a team of event planners and a stage director. But in this case, it was just the inevitable collision of Sebastian's vanity and his criminality. Just as the district attorney, a stern man named Mr. Henderson, stepped forward to read Sebastian his rights, the front door swung open. It wasn't locked. Sebastian had left it open for his grand audience. "Surprise." The voice belonged to Aunt Linda, Julia's older sister. She bustled in, carrying a large casserole dish covered in foil, followed by Uncle Dave and my 3 cousins. They were laughing, loud, and expecting a celebration. Sebastian had told them I was coming home to invest in his business. He had painted a picture of a prodigal daughter returning to pay tribute to the stepfather who raised her. They stopped dead in the foyer. The scene before them was a tableau of disaster. Sebastian was backed against the mantel, his face the color of ash. 2 uniformed officers stood on either side of him. Julia was slumped in a dining chair, sobbing into her hands, the crumpled credit report on the floor at her feet. The twins were standing by the stairs, looking terrified but strangely vindicated. And then there was me, standing in the center of the room in my white suit, calm, composed, and utterly untouched by the chaos. "Oh my God," Aunt Linda gasped, nearly dropping the casserole. What is going on? Is someone hurt? Willow, is that you?" "Hello, Aunt Linda," I said. Why voice cutting through the stunned silence? "No one is hurt. Well, not physically, but I'm afraid the party is canceled." "Officer," Uncle Dave stepped forward, his jovial demeanor vanishing. "What is this? Why are you harassing my brother-in-law?" Sebastian saw an opening, a final, desperate lifeline. He straightened up, trying to muster some of his old, bullying bravado. "Dave, thank God," Sebastian stammered, pointing a shaking finger at me. "It's a misunderstanding, a prank. Willow, she's sick. She brought these actors here to embarrass us. She's having a mental break, just like when she was a teenager. She's off her meds." He looked at me with wild, pleading eyes, daring me to contradict him. He was banking on the old narrative that I was the crazy, stinky, difficult child. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply picked up the credit report from the floor and walked over to Aunt Linda. "It's not a prank, Linda," I said softly. "Mr. Henderson here is the district attorney. He's here because Sebastian stole Kyle and Caroline's identities." "What?" Linda looked from me to Sebastian. That's impossible. Sebastian is a businessman." "Look at the paper," I urged her. Linda set the casserole on the console table and took the document. Uncle Dave leaned over her shoulder. I watched their eyes scan the lines. I watched the confusion turn to shock and the shock turn to disgust. $45,000. Dave read aloud, his voice booming in the quiet room. "In Kyle's name, defaulted. Sebastian, what the hell is this?" "It's an investment strategy," Sebastian yelled, the sweat now pouring down his face. "You don't understand high finance, Dave. I was building their credit. I was going to pay it back tenfold once the tech deal went through." "There is no tech deal, Mr. Miller," Mr. Henderson interrupted, his voice dry and authoritative. "And there is no investment. We've traced the funds. You used the credit cards to pay for the lease on your car, your country club dues, and online gambling debts." The silence that followed was absolute. The cousins were filming on their phones. The neighbors were likely watching from their windows. The facade Sebastian had spent 12 years maintaining, the image of the wealthy, benevolent patriarch, shattered instantly and completely. "Julia," Linda turned to her sister, "did you know about this?" Julia looked up, her mascara running down her cheeks. She looked at Sebastian, the man she had chosen over her own daughter. The man she had let call me stinky while he drained my inheritance. "He told me," Julia sobbed, her voice weak, "he told me he was taking care of us." "He was taking care of himself," I corrected her, "just like he always has." One of the officers stepped forward and pulled Sebastian's hands behind his back. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest sound in the world. Click, click, click. "You can't do this," Sebastian screamed as they began to march him toward the door. "I am a pillar of this community. I own this house." "Actually," I said, stepping into his path one last time. "You don't. The bank owns it. And as of tomorrow, they're foreclosing. You're not leaving a mansion, Sebastian. You're leaving a crime scene." He lunged at me, restrained only by the officer's grip. His face was twisted into a mask of pure hate. "You ungrateful little brat," he spat. "You still smell, you hear me? You'll always be garbage." I leaned in close, so close I could smell the fear radiating off him. "I smell like justice, Sebastian," I whispered. "And it's the last thing you're going to smell for a very long time." They dragged him out the door, past the stunned extended family, past the Mercedes he would never drive, and into the back of the squad car. I turned back to the room. Julia was weeping uncontrollably. Aunt Linda looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear. The twins were just staring at me. I walked over to Kyle and Caroline. "Are you guys okay?" I asked. Kyle looked at the door where his father had just been taken away, then looked at me. "Is it true about the money?" "Yes," I said, "but don't worry, I'm going to fix it. My lawyers are already working on clearing your credit reports. You won't start your lives in debt." "Why?" Caroline asked, wiping her eyes. "Mom said you hated us." I looked at Julia, who flinched. "I don't hate you," I said loud enough for the whole room to hear. "I was you. I just got out before he could do this to me too." The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely public. In the weeks that followed, the visionary entrepreneur, Sebastian Miller, became the subject of a very different kind of local fame. The story of the man who stole his children's identities to fund a fake lifestyle was everywhere. The local news ran a segment. The country club revoked his membership publicly. He was denied bail, given the flight risk and the sheer volume of evidence I had prov. My legal team handed everything over to the DA on a silver platter. The trust fund fraud, the credit card theft, the bank loan falsifications. He was looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison. But the real work was cleaning up the mess he left behind. I didn't give Julia the $200,000. Giving an addict cash doesn't help them, and Julia was addicted to the illusion of status. Instead, I let the house go. The foreclosure went through. It was a necessary purging. That house was a monument to their vanity and my misery. I wanted it gone. However, I didn't leave the twins on the street. I rented a modest, clean 3-bedroom apartment in a nearby town, close enough to their school, but far enough away from the gossip of their old neighborhood. I paid the rent for a year in advance. I filled the fridge. I bought them new clothes, clothes that fit, clothes that were theirs, not costumes for a performance. I sat Julia down in the empty living room of the mansion on the day the movers came. "This is it," I told her. "I am paying for the apartment for 12 months. I am paying for a credit repair service for the twins, and I have set up a small educational trust for them that you cannot touch. It is controlled by a third-party executor. Julia looked small. Without the house, without Sebastian, without the lies, she was just a middle-aged woman with no skills and a lot of regrets. "Willow," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry, I didn't see it. I was blinded by him." "You weren't blind, Mom," I said, using the word for the first time in a decade. It felt strange on my tongue. "You just didn't want to look. You preferred a comfortable lie to an uncomfortable truth, and you were willing to sacrifice me to keep it." She reached for my hand. "Can you ever forgive me? Can we be a family again?" I looked at her hand, the hand that had locked the door against me when I was 16. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold it back. "Forgiveness is a process," I said honestly. "It's not a switch I can flip. Right now, I'm not your daughter, I'm your safety net. And I'm doing this for Kyle and Caroline because no one did it for me." I stood up. "You need to get a job, Julia. The rent is paid for a year. After that, it's on you. You have to learn to stand on your own feet. No more consultants. No more rich husbands, just you." I walked out of the house before she could answer. I waited in the driveway for the twins. They ran out, carrying their backpacks. "Are you leaving?" Kyle asked. "I have to go back to the city," I said. "I have a company to run, but—" I pulled out 2 brand new iPhones and handed them to them. "My number is in there. It's the only number in there right now. If you need anything, if the fridge is empty, if Mom isn't looking for work, if you just want to talk, you call me. You don't ask her permission, you call me." Caroline hugged me. It was awkward at first, a stiff, hesitant embrace, but then she squeezed tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "and you smell really good." I laughed, and this time the sound was genuine. It felt light. It felt like the final weight falling off my shoulders. "It's called resilience," I told her, hugging her back. "I'll send you a bottle." I drove away from the collapsing life I had once desperately wanted to be part of. I watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt clean. I had returned to the place that tried to bury me, and I hadn't just survived. I had cleared the rot away. The stinky girl was gone. In her place was a woman who knew exactly what she was worth, and who knew that the sweetest scent in the world wasn't perfume. It was the fresh, crisp air of freedom.